My name is Irene Judson. I am 42 years old. And last Mother's Day, my ex-husband sat at a dinner table with 30 people. My family, his family, our children, and told everyone I was just a housewife who lived off his paycheck for 16 years. He laughed when he said it. Some people laughed with him. My daughter did not laugh. Natalie was 19, a sophomore studying finance at Ohio State. She had spent the last 3 months going through bank statements, tax returns, and investment records that my husband never knew I kept copies of. What she found changed everything. Not just for that dinner, for my son, for my ex-husband's new wife, for his mother, who had spent 4 years whispering to relatives that I contributed nothing. What happened at that Mother's Day table is the reason I am telling you this story today. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. If you are new here, this is where women share the moments that changed everything. The boundaries they set, the truths they told, and the strength they found in the quietest rooms. Drop a comment about a time someone underestimated you, and be sure to subscribe so you do not miss what happens next. 4 years after the divorce, I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Ghana, just east of Columbus. Nothing fancy. Clean lines, low rent, a kitchen window that faced a row of sugar maples. I liked it because it was mine. I worked as a management accountant at Thompson & Gale Furniture Manufacturing. Had been there 3 years. Before that, I did contract bookkeeping for 2 small businesses while the divorce finalized. Before that, I managed every dollar my family ever earned, saved, or spent for 16 years. Nobody called that a job. My routine was simple. Up at 5:30, coffee, oatmeal, 20 minutes of news, office by 7:15, home by 5. Tuesdays and Thursdays, my son Dylan stayed with me, shared custody, alternating weeks. He was 17, a junior at Westerville North. Quiet kid, good grades, asked a lot of questions he already half knew the answers to. Sundays, I FaceTimed Natalie at Ohio State. She would sit cross-legged on her dorm bed and tell me about her finance classes, her study group, the boy in Econ 202 who kept borrowing her calculator. I listened. I laughed. I did not tell her that most weeks Sunday was the only time the apartment felt full. Numbers had been my language since I was 16. Bagging groceries at Kroger and balancing my mother's checkbook because she worked 2 jobs and could not keep track. I paid my way through Columbus State Community College, transferred, state, graduated with an accounting degree and $43,000 in student loans that I paid off in 7 years. I do not argue. I reconcile. That is what accountants do. 4 years of quiet, 4 years of Greg telling everyone his version. I thought the truth would surface on its own. I was wrong about the timing, but right about who would find it. The first time Greg said it out loud was Thanksgiving 5 years ago, his parents' house in Westerville. 22 people packed into a dining room that smelled like turkey grease and Linda's cinnamon candles. Greg had invited 2 coworkers. He stood by the buffet table with a beer in one hand and his other hand on my shoulder, the way men do when they are about to introduce you as a footnote. "This is Irene," he said. "She stays home with the kids. I handle everything else." He tilted his head back and laughed. Loud, performative, the kind of laugh that tells the room it is okay to laugh, too. They laughed. I was standing in the kitchen doorway holding a 9-by-13 casserole dish. Green bean casserole. I had made it from scratch because Linda's was from a can, and nobody said anything about that either. I stopped walking. Nobody looked at me. Just a housewife. Greg said it like a job title, like it was all I had ever been. Here is what Greg did not know. Here is what nobody at that Thanksgiving table knew. The housewife had been moving $800 a month into a separate investment account for 11 years. The housewife picked the 529 college plans, the Roth IAS, the emergency fund allocation. The housewife filed every tax return, negotiated every insurance premium, refinanced the mortgage at 4.1% when rates dropped in 2016, and saved us $38,000 over the life of the loan. Greg could not log into our bank account without asking me for the password, but he handled everything else. That Thanksgiving, I set the casserole on the table, sat down, and ate my dinner without saying a word. I had been married 14 years by then. I thought that was just how it worked. Let me explain how our money actually worked because Greg never could. From the day we got married, Greg deposited his paycheck into our joint account. That was his financial contribution. End of list. Every bill, every budget decision, every long-term plan. That was me. I paid the mortgage on the 15th of every month. I scheduled auto payments for electric, gas, water, internet, and 2 cell phones. I kept a spreadsheet color-coded, updated weekly, tracking groceries, gas, clothing, medical copays, school fees, and the 37 other categories that make a family of 4 function. In 2008, when Natalie was 2, I opened a $529 college savings plan through Vanguard. I funded it with $400 a month pulled from our joint checking. Greg signed the joint tax return that listed it every single year. His signature is on page 2. In 2010, I opened a second $529 for Dylan. Same structure, same monthly transfers. In 2012, I started a Roth IRA for both of us, $6,500 a year each. Greg never asked where the money went. When I sat him down once to walk through the budget, he waved his hand and said, "You handle it, that is your thing." He delegated everything and then took credit for the result. Natalie made me a Mother's Day card when she was 14. Construction paper, glitter, glue, her handwriting still round and careful. Inside, she wrote, "Thank you for everything you do that no one sees. I kept it in my desk drawer under the calculator. I should have known then." When someone lets you do all the work but will not let you have any of the credit, they are not grateful. They are building a case. They are constructing a version of the marriage that puts them at the center and you in the margins. The marriage ended the way a slow leak ends a tire, not with a blowout, with a flat you have been driving on for months. Greg started spending more time with a coworker named Cheryl Morgan. Lunches that ran long. Texts at 10 p.m. I do not think they were sleeping together. Not then, but the boundary had already moved. I brought it up one Tuesday night after the kids were asleep. Calm, specific, I showed him the phone bill. 47 calls to the same number in 3 weeks. Greg's jaw tightened. "You are overreacting. You always do this. You see problems in everything. That is why you are an accountant." I suggested couples counseling. He agreed. Then he came to 2 sessions out of 8. At the second session, Dr. Whitman asked Greg to describe what I did for the family. Greg said, "She keeps the house running, meals, laundry, that sort of thing." Dr. Whitman asked, "And the finances?" Greg said, "I earn the money." Dr. Whitman looked at me. I looked at the floor. I knew then. 3 weeks later, I hired a divorce attorney. Rachel Emerson, downtown Columbus, 18 years of family law experience. When I told Greg, he was shocked. "You do not even know what equitable distribution means." He said, "I filed our taxes for 16 years, Greg. I know exactly what it means." He hired a lawyer twice as expensive, but money does not win a divorce. Information does, and I had it. Every account, every contribution, every transfer, every quarterly statement. Greg did not even know we had a 529 plan. I did not want a fight. I wanted accuracy. Greg wanted a narrative. That was the difference between us. It always had been. The divorce took 9 months. Ohio requires at least a waiting period. And Greg's lawyer kept filing delays because Greg could not produce documents. I had already organized in labeled folders. The mediator, a retired judge named Harold Finch, raised an eyebrow at our first session when I slid a 3 in binder across the table. "Is that your documentation?" he asked. 16 years of tax returns, bank statements, investment summaries, mortgage records, insurance policies, and college fund contribution histories. I said, "Tabbed by year." Greg's lawyer asked for a recess. In the end, the settlement was fair. Ohio is an equitable distribution state, not 50-50. The house was sold. Net proceeds split. Spousal support was set at 5 years. Guideline for a 16-year marriage at $2,200 a month. I kept the 529 plans because I was the account holder and primary contributor. Greg kept his 401k and the truck. The night we signed the final papers, I sat at my kitchen table in the new apartment, boxes still stacked against the wall, Dylan asleep in the next room, and made copies of everything, every tax return, every bank statement, every investment record. I put them in a manila envelope, sealed it, wrote the date on the outside in black Sharpie. September 14th, 2022, tucked it into the bottom drawer of my desk, behind the hanging files, under a box of old receipts. I kept copies, not out of spite, not out of some plan for revenge. I kept copies because I had spent 16 years watching one person control the story, and I knew what happens when the only narrator is the one with the most to hide. I did not know my daughter would be the one to open that envelope. 4 years later, 6 months after the divorce, the phone call started. Not to me, about me. My friend Diane texted first. Irene, I was at the Rotary potluck Saturday. Greg told Jim Carver, "You never worked a day in your life," and took half his retirement. Then my coworker Alan. "Hey, my wife ran into Greg's mom at the grocery store. She told my wife you, and I am quoting, took Greg to the cleaners. Thought you should know." Then Greg's cousin Paula, a DM on Facebook, just wanted you to know what people are saying. Greg is telling the family you contributed nothing and walked away with everything. The narrative was simple and effective. Greg earned every dollar. Irene sat at home. The court gave her money she did not deserve. Linda, Greg's mother, amplified it. She had always been the broadcast tower in that family. When Linda said something, it became Judson canon within a week. And Linda had decided long before the divorce that I was not good enough for her son. She sat at home eating my son's money. Linda told Greg's aunt, and now she wants sympathy, too. I wanted to fight back. I texted Greg, "That is not what happened, and you know it." His reply came in 6 seconds. "You are being emotional again. Let it go." I called Dr. Acaffer, the family therapist I had been seeing since the divorce. She was direct. "Do not pull the children into this. Dylan and Natalie are still processing. When they are older, they will find the truth on their own." I listened. I followed her advice. I kept quiet, but quiet is not the same as gone, and a lie told loudly is still a lie. What I did not know then was that Greg was not just telling relatives. He was telling our son. Dylan was 13 when the divorce finalized. By 14, he was asking me questions that sounded rehearsed. "Mom, did Dad really pay for everything? Mom, why did you not work? Natalie said you did the taxes, but Dad said you just paid bills. That is not really working." I stood at the kitchen counter dicing onions for chili. The knife paused mid-cut. "Who told you that?" I asked, even though I already knew. "I mean," Dad said, "your father and I both contributed to this family in different ways." "Yeah, but he worked like at a job." I set the knife down, wiped my hands on the dish towel, sat at the table across from my 13-year-old son who was repeating his father's words like a recording played back at half speed. "Dylan, I managed every dollar this family earned for 16 years. I opened your college savings account when you were 3 months old. I filed every tax return. I paid every bill. I negotiated every rate, every premium, every contract." He looked at the table. "Dad says that is just paying bills." I wanted to scream. I wanted to topple out the spreadsheets, the contribution records, the tax returns with Greg's signature on page 2 next to my calculations on page 1. But Dr. Acapper's voice was in my head. "Do not pull the children into this. When you are older," I said, "I will show you everything right now. I need you to know that both your parents took care of you in different ways." He nodded, went back to his homework. That night, after Dylan was asleep, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just kind of crying you do when your own child repeats the lie that erased you. 3 years later, Dylan would hear those numbers read out loud at a dinner table. But not from me. Greg married Cheryl Morgan 2 years after our divorce. I learned about it from Natalie, who called me on a Sunday morning sounding like she had not slept. "Mom, they got married yesterday at a winery." Cheryl posted 47 photos. Dylan was the ring bearer. I sat on my couch, coffee going cold in my hand. Was it a nice ceremony? Long pause. She wore a white pantsuit. Dad gave a speech about second chances. "That sounds like your father." Natalie hesitated. "Mom, Cheryl keeps calling herself Mom, too. She bought Dylan new sneakers and posted them on Instagram. Caption said, "My kids." The gut punch was not the sneakers. It was not the Instagram caption. It was the possessive pronoun, my kids, as if 16 years of mine could be replaced with a hashtag and a pair of Nikes. But I did not call Greg. I did not post a response. I went to work on Monday, reconciled a vendor invoice for $63,000, and ate a turkey sandwich at my desk. Cheryl's version of my life arrived secondhand, the way gossip always does. She told her friends she was picking up where Irene left off. She told Greg's family she was giving those kids the stability they deserve. At a neighborhood block party, she told Natalie, "Your mom is so brave, starting over at her age with nothing." Natalie called me that night. "Mom, Cheryl thinks you are broke." "I am not broke." I told her, "You have a career." She said, "Oh, honey, I did not mean it like that." "What did you say?" "Nothing, but I wanted to throw my drink at her." "Please do not throw drinks at your stepmother. She is not my stepmother." "She is Dad's wife." Fair enough. Cheryl did not know I was an accountant. Greg had told her I stayed home. It is so hard being a stepmom when the ex is always causing drama. That was Cheryl's line at every family event. I never caused any drama. I was too busy balancing ledgers. Natalie started at Ohio State in the fall of 2024. Finance major, Dean's Honors Program. She called me the first week to tell me she was the youngest person in her intermediate accounting class and the only one who already knew what a 1099 INT was. "Wonder where I learned that," she said. "Probably TikTok," she laughed. Over her freshman year, something shifted. Natalie began asking questions. Not the rehearsed kind Dylan asked, but sharp ones, direct questions that had spreadsheets behind them. "Mom, how do you afford this apartment on your salary?" "I budget." "Dad said you got nothing in the divorce." I measured my words. "Your father and I split our assets according to Ohio law. An independent mediator oversaw the division." "That is not what Dad says." "I know." Silence on the phone. "Mom, did he lie to us?" I closed my eyes. The question was so simple. The answer was so complicated. "Your father has a version of events that he believes. I have documentation." Documentation. Tax returns, bank records, investment statements, everything from the marriage. "Can I see them?" "When you are ready." "What makes you think I am not ready?" "Because you still call him on Sundays." Another silence then. "Okay, not yet." I did not push. Irene Judson does not push. She files things in labeled folders and waits for the right audit cycle. Not yet. And the reason Natalie finally asked again had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with Greg's speeches or Cheryl's Instagram or Linda's gossip. It was a government form, a financial aid application, a line on a page that did not add up. And Natalie was a finance major. She knew what happens when a line does not add up. Easter Sunday, 4 months before the dinner, Linda hosted at her house in Westerville. 40-year-old wallpaper, doilies on every flat surface, and a dining table she polished every Saturday, whether it needed it or not. I was not invited. That was standard. Dylan went. He came home that night and went straight to his room. I heard the door click, not a slam. Dylan did not slam doors, just a deliberate click. I knocked at 9. "You okay?" "Fine. How was Easter?" "Fine." He texted Natalie instead. She called me Monday morning before her 8 a.m. lecture. "Mom, Grandma said something again." "What did she say?" Dylan texted me the quote. "Thank God Greg found Cheryl, a real partner, not someone who sits at home spending his money." I held the phone with both hands, pressed it against my ear like if I held it tight enough, the words would not hurt. She said it at the table in front of Ofrion. In front of 15 people, Dylan said Uncle Frank left the room after. What did Dylan do? Nothing. He said he ate his ham and stared at his plate. I took a breath, then another. "Your grandmother has her opinion." But it is not an opinion if it is wrong. I paused. That sentence hit different. Not Dad says, not Grandma thinks. Natalie said it is wrong, present tense definitive, like she already knew the truth and was just waiting for permission to say it. "Natalie, I am not going to ask you to take sides. You do not have to ask. She called you a freeloader in front of your own son." "Mom, that is not an opinion. That is slander. That is your grandmother. That is why it is worse." That was the first time I heard it in her voice. Not anger, Precision. She was building a case and did not even know it yet. 4 years. That is how long I stayed quiet, not silent. Quiet. There is a difference. Silent means you have nothing to say. Quiet means you are holding something back because the timing is not right. I followed Dr. Akapper's advice. I did not pull my children into the middle of a narrative war. I did not post on Facebook. I did not call Linda and read her the tax returns line by line, even though I knew exactly where my glasses and the phone were on the nights I most wanted to. But I will not pretend it did not cost me something. Every time Dylan asked, "Why did you not work?" It was a knife, not a stabbing, dramatic knife, a paper cut, the kind that stings for hours and bleeds in places nobody sees. Every time a relative paused before hugging me at a family event. Every time Cheryl posted a caption that rewrote my history in real time. Every time Linda's voice echoed through the Judson grapevine with a story about me that was not true. The truth does not need you to defend it. It needs someone willing to look. And I was starting to think that someone might already be looking. I did not know at the time, but my daughter was about to become that someone. If you have ever had someone rewrite your story, someone who told your kids, your family, your friends, a version of you that is not true, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below because silence does not mean the truth disappears. It just means it is waiting. Stay with me because what my daughter did next is the reason I am telling you this story. January, Natalie's sophomore year, Ohio winter, the kind that turns the sky into a sheet of gray felt and does not let go until April. She needed to renew her FAFSA, free application for federal student aid, standard procedure for every college student in America. The form requires financial disclosure from both parents, even after a divorce. I sent my documents within 48 hours of her request. Tax returns for the last 2 years. W2S, bank statements, investment summaries, neat labeled PDF format, alphabetized by category. Greg stalled. "I will get it to you. 3 weeks. My accountant is busy. 2 more weeks. It is complicated with the new house. Another week, 6 weeks. Natalie submitted the form with only my records. The financial aid office flagged it immediately. "We need both parents' information to process your renewal." She called Greg, pushed harder. He finally sent 1 page, a single sheet, partial income summary, sections redacted with black marker. Natalie stared at that page for 2 hours. She was a finance major. She had spent the last year learning to read income statements, balance sheets, cash flow projections. She knew what clean numbers looked like, and she knew what numbers looked like when someone was hiding something. Greg reported an adjusted gross income on that FAFSA worksheet that did not match his lifestyle. The new house in Dublin had a Zillow estimate of $480,000. The truck was a 2024 Silverado. Cheryl posted photos from a 10-day trip to Cabo in November. The numbers did not add up. And when a line on a financial form does not add up, you do not assume it is a mistake. You pull the source documents. Natalie called me on a Friday night. "Mom, I need to come home this weekend. Everything okay? I need to see the divorce paperwork." She drove 45 minutes from campus on a Saturday morning, pulled into my parking spot at 8:15. I had coffee ready and did not ask questions. Natalie sat at the kitchen table, same chair she used to sit in for homework when she was 10. She had a yellow legal pad and a mechanical pencil, and the look in her eyes that I recognized because I see it in the mirror every April during tax season. "Mom, I need to see the divorce paperwork." "Are you sure? I am a finance major." "Mom, I can read a balance sheet." I walked to my desk, bottom drawer, behind the hanging files under the box of old receipts. The manila envelope was exactly where I had left it 4 years earlier. The paper had gone slightly yellow at the edges. The Sharpie date, September 14th, 2022, was still crisp. The seal was still intact. I had never opened it. Not once. Not on the nights I wanted to call Linda. Not on the mornings after Dylan repeated his father's words. I handed it to Natalie. She broke the seal with her thumb. 16 years of tax returns, joint bank account statements, 529 plan contribution summaries, Roth IRA records, mortgage payment schedules, insurance premium histories, investment account quarterly reports. She spread them across the kitchen table like a puzzle and did not look up for 2 hours. I sat in the kitchen, drank my coffee, read a magazine, did not hover. At 10:30, she came out of the spare room where she had been cross-referencing at the desk. "Mom," her voice was flat, the kind of flat that comes right before something cracks. "You saved $347,000 for us, for you and your brother." "Yes. Dad told us you contributed nothing. I know what he told you." Silence. The coffee maker clicked off. I kept copies. I said it the way you say a fact. No drama, no told you so. Just a sentence that had waited 4 years to be heard. Natalie held a tax return to the light like she was checking for a watermark. Greg's signature on page 2, my calculations on page 1. He signed these. She said, every year, every year. She set the paper down. I need a week. She did not call for 7 days. I did not push. I cleaned the apartment. I went to work. I reconciled quarterly reports for Thompson and Gale. I ate dinner alone on the nights Dylan was at Greg's. I checked my phone 3 times a day. Morning lunch before bed, and each time there was nothing from Natalie. On the 7th night, she called at 9:42. "Mom, did Dad know you were saving that money? He told me to handle the finances. I handled them." "Did he know about the investment account?" "He knew. He signed the joint tax return every year. Line 14, itemized deductions. Line 21, investment income. His signature is on page 2, right next to mine. So he knew." "Yes. And he still told us you did nothing." I did not answer that. The answer was on the documents she had been reading all week. Natalie was quiet for a long time. I could hear her roommate's TV in the background, some reality show muffled through the dorm wall. "Mom, the FAFSA numbers Dad sent me. His income is way lower than what these old tax returns show he was trending toward, and his lifestyle does not match what he reported. I cannot speak to your father's current finances. I know, but I can read a pattern." She paused. "Then he did not forget what you did. He chose to forget. He rewrote it because the truth did not serve him." I pressed the phone against my ear. My daughter was 20 years old, and she had just articulated something that took me 4 years and a therapist to understand. "Yes," I said, "that is exactly what happened." "Okay." Another pause. "I am going to do something, and I need you to trust me. I trust you even if you do not know what it is." Especially then, she hung up, and I did not hear her plan until 3 weeks before Mother's Day. My daughter built a spreadsheet the way I built a balance sheet. Methodical, cross-referenced, color-coded. I learned the details later after the dinner, after everything, when she walked me through her process over coffee at a Panera near campus. She had approached the documents the way her professors taught her. Follow the money. She pulled every account statement I had kept, mapped Irene's contributions versus Greg's across 16 years of marriage. She tracked savings deposits, investment returns, college fund growth, mortgage overpayments, and cost reduction decisions. The refinance, the insurance renegotiations, the utility switches. When she was done, the math was simple. Total value I had built through active financial management, $347,000. Greg's contribution to savings beyond his base paycheck deposits, 0 additional dollars. I handled 100% off the allocation. Greg handled 0%. Natalie printed 12 pages color-coded by category, footnoted with source documents. Then she called Uncle Frank. Frank was Greg's younger brother, 41, electrician. The kind of man who wears his honesty like a hard hat. It is always on, and it protects him from the things other people pretend are not falling. "Uncle Frank, can I ask you something? Did Mom really never work?" Frank paused long enough for Natalie to hear him set down his beer. "Your mom was the smartest person in that marriage, Nat. Everyone knew it except Greg. Why did nobody say anything? Because your grandmother runs this family, and she decided your mom was not good enough the day your dad brought her home. That was 22 years ago. Linda does not forget. She catalogs. Natalie had her 12 pages. She had Frank's quiet confirmation, and she had 3 weeks until Mother's Day. She started making phone calls. Mom, I want to host Mother's Day dinner this year. Both sides. You, Dad, Cheryl, Grandma Linda. Uncle Frank, everyone. She said it on a Tuesday evening, casual like she was suggesting takeout. I do not think that is a good idea, I said. Trust me. Natalie, the last time your father and I were in the same room, he made a toast to Cheryl for stepping up where I could not. I remember. That is exactly why I am doing this. Why? Because Dylan is graduating next month. Because you and Dad have not been in the same room for a year and a half. Because families that avoid the truth do not heal. They just get quieter. That sounded like something Dr. Acapper would say. I did not argue. Where? Rosewood Grill. They have a private dining room, seats 30. That is a lot of seats. I want everyone there, both sides. She had already booked it. I could hear it in her voice. The plan was in motion and she was asking for my cooperation, not my permission. I said yes. Natalie called Greg the same night. I know because Dylan told me. Greg came downstairs grinning. Natalie wants a big Mother's Day dinner. Greg told Dylan, the whole family. She said she wants everyone together before your graduation. Dylan said Greg clapped him on the shoulder. That is my girl finally acting like a Judson. Natalie did not respond to that part. She told me later. I wanted to say something, but I had 12 pages in my backpack and 3 weeks to wait. Saying something then would have wasted the ammunition. My daughter, 20 years old, patient, strategic, her mother's daughter 3 weeks. That is how long I had to wait without knowing what my daughter was carrying in her bag. The 3 weeks before that dinner were ordinary in every way that mattered, and electric in every way I could not explain. I went to work. I reconciled accounts. I ate lunch at my desk. Tuesdays and Thursdays, Dylan came over. We made spaghetti or ordered Chinese from Golden Dragon on Main Street. He had gotten quieter since Easter. Not hostile, just watchful. 17-year-olds are like that. They are observing the adults in the room and deciding which ones to believe. Sundays, Natalie called, but the calls were different. Mom, which bank was the 529 through? Vanguard and the Roth IRA, Fidelity. What was the exact mortgage rate after the refinance? 4.1% locked in March 2016. She wrote everything down. I could hear the pencil moving. Finance homework. I asked something like that. I did not press. I am an accountant. I know that some audits take time. You gather, you organize, you wait until the numbers are complete before you present your findings. The night before the dinner, I could not sleep. I stood in the bathroom at midnight, brushing my teeth, staring at the mirror. I looked tired. 42 years of tired. I opened the desk drawer, not the bottom drawer with the manila envelope. Natalie still had that, the top drawer. I found the Mother's Day card Natalie had made when she was 14. Construction paper, glitter glue. Thank you for everything you do that no one sees. I slipped it into my wallet. I did not know why. I just wanted something of hers close to me. Something that proved in her handwriting that my daughter had seen me long before anyone else read to look. I laid out my clothes for the next day. Lavender cardigan, gray slacks, my mother's pearl earrings. Simple, clean, ready for whatever was coming. Mother's Day, 11 a.m. I drove 20 minutes from Gahanna to the Rosewood Grill in Upper Arlington. The parking lot was half full. A banner by the entrance read, Happy Mother's Day brunch specials. Yellow tulips in the window boxes. The private dining room was at the back of the restaurant. Past the main bar, past the hostess stand, through a set of double doors with frosted glass panels. Natalie had reserved it under her name. Long rectangular table, white tablecloth, candles and glass votives every 3 FT. Place cards written in Natalie's handwriting, 30 chairs. I was early. Natalie and Dylan were already there adjusting the place cards. Natalie wore a navy blazer and her hair pulled back. She looked older than 19. She looked like she was running a board meeting. You look nice, Mom, she said. You look ready, I said. She did not smile. The guests filtered in over the next 20 minutes. My sister Bate and her husband Mark, 2 of my friends from work, Sarah and Janet, Natalie's roommate Brianna, who had driven down for the weekend. Then Greg sighed. Uncle Frank and his wife Laura, two of Greg's cousins, Todd and Amanda. Linda arrived in a burgundy blouse and gold earrings, kissing cheeks and commenting on the centerpiece. Three more Judson relatives I recognized from holidays I was no longer invited to. At 11:40, Greg walked in with Cheryl. He wore a charcoal blazer. She wore a cream-wrap dress and carried a bouquet of white roses for the table. They moved through the room like a couple at a fundraiser. Handshake, kiss on the cheek, compliment, repeat. Greg looked at me across the table, smiled. The kind of smile you give someone you have already beaten. I picked up my water glass and waited. First course, butternut squash soup. Small talk. Bate asked Dylan about graduation plans. Ohio State, he said. Undeclared. I will figure it out. Greg, business major. I told him business is where the money is. Dylan stared at his soup. Cheryl launched into a story about a house she had just closed. Biggest commission of my career, 3.2% of $950,000. She said the numbers the way people say them when they want you to do the math. Todd's wife asked Linda about her garden. Linda spent 4 minutes describing her rose bushes and then without any transition said Cheryl has been such a blessing. Greg really found someone who matches his energy, a go-getter. She said it loud enough for the table to hear. She looked at me when she said, "Go get her." I ate my soup. Sarah, sitting to my left, touched my elbow. I shook my head. Not now. The main course arrived. Grilled salmon, roasted asparagus, garlic, mashed potatoes. Conversation moved to the usual channels. Whether Ohio State football recruiting, the new bypass they were building on Route 33. Then Greg leaned toward Todd and said loud enough to carry, "Dylan is going to Ohio State, too. I told him I would cover it. Nolans, that is what fathers do." I set down my fork. Dylan glanced at me from across the table. Quick, guilty. He knew. He knew I had been funding 60% of his 529 since the month he was born. He knew Greg's name was not on a single contribution form, but he said nothing. Natalie reached under her chair. Her backpack was there, unzipped already. She caught my eye and held it just for a second. I picked up my water glass and took a long sip. Natalie stood before dessert was served. "Before we wrap up, I want to make a toast. It is Mother's Day." 30 people turned, glasses half raised, candle light on white tablecloth. I want to thank the women at this table who raised me. Mom, Cheryl, Grandma, Linda, polite applause. Linda beamed. Cheryl pressed a hand to her chest. Greg put his arm around the back of Cheryl's chair and grinned. Then Greg stood. Nobody asked him to. "Can I add something?" He did not wait for an answer. "Natalie, I am so proud of you. You are the first Judson woman to go to college, and you did it because I work it every day to make sure you could." He looked at me, held the look. The room followed his eyes. "Your mother was a great housewife. She made sure dinner was on the table. But let us be honest, this family runs on paychecks, not casseroles." He laughed, head tilted back loud. That same laugh from the Thanksgiving 5 years ago, the one that gives the room permission. Linda chuckled. Todd forced a smile. Cheryl tucked her hair behind her ear and looked at her plate. But the room was thinner this time, fewer people laughing. Bates' jaw was tight. Frank sat down his fork and leaned back in his chair, watching. Sarah gripped her napkin under the table, just a housewife. He said it again in public in front of my children and his mother and 30 people who had known us both for years. I did not move. I did not cry. I did not stand up. I waited because somewhere under my daughter's chair was a manila envelope with 16 years of truth inside it. And Greg had just given her the opening she needed. 30 people looked at me. I could feel it. The way a room shifts when everyone expects a reaction. They wanted tears. They wanted anger. They wanted the ex-wife to storm out so Greg could shake his head and say, "See, she always does this." I picked up my water glass, took a sip, set it down, centered it on the napkin. Then I looked at Greg, steady, the way I look at a column of numbers that does not balance. "Are you done?" Greg blinked. He had expected something bigger. "I'm just being honest, Irene. Someone has to." "You are right," I said. "Someone does." I turned to Natalie. She was already standing, already reaching under her chair. I did not know what was about to happen. Not the details, not the 12-page spreadsheet, not the specific numbers, not the color-coded columns, but I knew my daughter. I knew that look on her face, the same expression I get when the numbers do not balance, and I have found the discrepancy. She was not angry, she was precise. Bate leaned toward me and whispered, "Do not let him get to you." I whispered back, "He did not." Natalie lifted her backpack onto her lap, unzipped the front pocket, and pulled out a manila envelope. The same manila envelope, yellow at the edges. The Sharpie date still visible, September 14th, 2022. But the seal was broken now. Natalie had opened it 3 months ago at my kitchen table and had not stopped reading since. She held it up so the table could see. Greg's smile flickered. He sat back down. The music was still playing, some soft jazz standard. A waiter paused at head double doors, looked in, and quietly stepped back. Nobody spoke. Natalie opened the envelope. I need to pause here because this is the part of the story that matters. I did not ask Natalie to do this. I did not coach her. I did not hand her a script or tell her what to say. She found the documents on her own, driven by a line on a FAFSA form that did not add up. She spent 3 months cross-referencing numbers the way I taught her, not deliberately, but by example. By 16 years of watching her mother sit at a kitchen table with a calculator and a spreadsheet and a cup of black coffee, making sure every dollar went where it was supposed to go. This is not a story about revenge. This is a story about what happens when someone finally reads the numbers out loud. For 4 years, my children heard one version of their mother, and that version was a lie. Not a misunderstanding, not a difference of perspective. A lie constructed deliberately, reinforced by repetition, and protected by the fact that I was too focused on shielding my kids to fight it. If you have ever sat at a table while someone rewrote your life out loud. If you have ever watched your kids absorb a lie because you were trying to protect them, you know exactly how this feels. That dinner table held 30 people, but only one person had the documents, and she was 19 years old. If this story is hitting close to home, hit that subscribe button because what happens next is the reason I told it. Natalie cleared her throat. She spread 3 pages on the tablecloth in front of her face up like she was presenting a quarterly report to a board of directors. Then she spoke. "Dad, you just said you worked every day to pay for my college. I want to thank you for that." Greg relaxed slightly, nodded. "But I also want to make sure the numbers are right because I am a finance major and I check numbers." The table was silent. Greg's smile was still there, but it had gone rigid at the edges. "What are you doing, Nat?" She pulled the first page from the envelope, held it up so the people nearest her could see the Vanguard letterhead. "This is the 529 college savings plan that paid for my first year at Ohio State. Account holder, Irene Judson. Opened January 2008. Total contributions over 16 years, $127,400. A murmur moved through the table. Someone set down a fork. Linda shifted forward in her chair. The monthly contribution was $400 every month for 16 years, pulled from the joint checking account managed by Mom. Greg stood. "That was our money, I earned it. You deposited a paycheck, Dad." Mom decided where it went. Churl touched Greg's arm. He pulled away. "This is inappropriate," Greg said. "We are at a dinner. You made a toast about paychecks." "Dad, I am just reading the paychecks." She set the first page down on the white tablecloth next to the votive candle. I could see the Vanguard logo reflected in the glass. Natalie pulled the second document. She was not rushing. She was not shaking. She held each page like an exhibit. "I am not here to take sides, Dad. I am here to read what is on the paper." Frank across Thedable uncrossed his arms and leaned forward. Greg was still standing. His face had gone from tan to pink. The second document was a joint federal tax return, the last year of the marriage. "This is your joint tax return filed by Mom." Adjusted gross income $142,000. Greg's cousin Todd leaned in to look. Amanda covered her mouth. "Dad, you told me your salary was $55,000 a year. This return shows your W-2 income at $68,000. Salaries change." Greg said that is not Mom's investment returns that year, $31,000. Rental income from the duplex Mom managed on Truex Street, $22,000. Interest and dividends from the savings and retirement accounts she built, $21,000. Natalie looked up from the page. The room was still 68 plus 31 plus 22 plus 21. That is $142,000, Dad. And $74,000 of it came from accounts Mom opened, funded, and managed without your involvement. Greg's hand gripped the edge of the table. You have no right to. These are joint returns. Both your names are on them. Page 2, bottom right. Your signature, Dad. She turned the page around so the table could see Greg's looping signature, my neat print beside it. Linda stood halfway up. Natalie, you are embarrassing this family. Natalie looked at her grandmother. No, Grandma, the numbers are embarrassing this family. Linda sat back down, and then Greg did something I had only seen once before. At the second counseling session with Dr. Whitman, he stopped performing. The charm dropped. The sales voice disappeared. He looked at Natalie with an expression that was for half a second genuine. I am still your dad. Natalie paused, swallowed. Her jaw tightened. I know, that is why this is hard. Then she pulled the last page. The last page was Natalie's own work. 12 columns, color-coded, footnoted. I cross-referenced every account Mom managed over 16 years of marriage. College savings, investment accounts, Roth IAS, emergency fund, mortgage overpayments. Nobody was eating. Nobody was holding a glass. The candles flickered and the music had either stopped or no one could hear it anymore. Total value Mom built through active financial management, $347,000. She let that number sit in the air. $347,000. I could see people doing the math behind their eyes. Dad's contribution to savings and investment management beyond depositing his paycheck. Zero. Zero additional dollars. Todd exhaled. Amanda gripped his forearm. A cousin I barely knew whispered something to her husband. Natalie looked at Greg. Just a housewife, she said. A housewife who saved $347,000. The daisy cutter line. Greg's own words, loaded, aimed, and returned. Greg opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Those numbers are that is not you are twisting this. Natalie did not raise her voice. Check the numbers, Dad, I already did. She set the last page on the table face up next to the 529 summary, next to the tax return, next to the candles and the dessert plates and the white roses Cheryl had brought to decorate a table that was now covered in 16 years of evidence. Greg looked around the room. 30 faces. Not one of them was looking at them with sympathy. Greg slammed his hand on the table. The glasses rattled. A votive candle tipped sideways and guttered. Dylan flinched. This is his voice filled the room, bounced off the waking, rattled the frosted glass doors. You went through my financial records. That is illegal. Natalie did not move. They were joint records. Mom's name is on everyone. She gave me copies. Greg spun toward me, red-faced, neck veins visible. You put her up to this. I did not know she was going to do this tonight. Liar. I looked at him. The man I had been married to for 16 years. The man who had signed tax returns without reading them. The man who had told our children I was nothing. Greg, I said it the way I say it when an auditor brings bad numbers to a review meeting. Level, firm, 2 syllables, sit down. He did not sit, but he stopped moving. His hand was still on the table, fingers white against the cloth. I kept copies. I said it quietly. Not to the room, not to the 30 people watching. To Greg, because Hen needed to hear it from me, not as a weapon, as a fact. I kept copies. He stared at me. I stared back. 4 years of silence behind my eyes and not a single tear in front of them. Greg tried to laugh. The same laugh, head tilted back, mouth open, loud. The laugh that had filled his parents' dining room 5 Thanksgivings ago. The laugh that had made a room full of people believe that a housewife was a joke. But the sound hit the walls and came back empty. Nobody laughed with him. The laugh died halfway through, like a car engine turning over and failing to catch. He stood there, mouth still half open, the room so quiet I could hear the ice shifting in someone's water glass. Cheryl spoke first, her voice cracked on the first word. I did not know any of this. She turned to Greg, mascara already smudging. He told me she did not work. He told me she contributed nothing. She looked at me. I am sorry. I did not. I believed him. Greg reached for her arm. Cheryl, not here. She pulled away, grabbed her purse from the back of her chair. Walked out of the private dining room without looking back. Her heels clicked on the hardwood floor, through the double doors, past the bar, and into the parking lot. Gone. Linda tried to rally. This is all out of context. Greg worked hard. You children do not understand. Frank stood up. He had been sitting at the far end of the table for the entire dinner, arms crossed, beer half finished, watching everything the way an electrician watches wiring, looking for the fault line. Linda, stop. She turned to him. Francis, I have known for years. Irene ran that family's money better than any banker in this town. Everyone at this table knew it, including you. He looked at Greg. Check the numbers, Greg. Your daughter already did. Dylan had not spoken since the soup course, 17 years old, sitting 3 seats from his father, 2 seats from his mother. He had spent 4 years hearing one version and 3 minutes hearing another. And the space between those two things was written all over his face. He pushed back his chair, the legs scraped against the floor. Everyone looked. He walked around the table, past Frank, past Linda, who reached for his hand and missed, past Todd and Amanda, past the empty chair where Cheryl had been sitting. He stopped at my chair, Mom. I looked up at him, my son, taller than me now. Greg's jaw, but my eyes. I am sorry I asked you why you did not work. My throat closed. I took his hand. You did not know. I know now. He sat down in the empty chair next to me. Natalie was on my other side. Greg, still standing at the head of the table, looked at his son, his daughter, his ex-wife. Dylan, come on. Let us go. Dylan did not move. 30 people at that table, candles still flickering, dessert plates untouched, and the only sound was my son's breathing next to me and the ice settling in a glass that no one was drinking from anymore. Greg left alone. He picked up his jacket from the back of his chair, said nothing, and walked out through the double doors. His footsteps were heavy on the hardwood. The front door of the restaurant opened and closed, and through the window I could see him standing in the parking lot, looking at the space where Cheryl's car had been. It was gone. Linda followed him 30 seconds later. She paused at the door and turned to the table. Irene, this is not over. Frank, without looking up from his beer, said, Yeah, Linda, it is. The room exhaled. Someone, Todd's wife, I think, picked up a water pitcher and refilled her glass just to have something to do with her hands. A cussing coughed. The waiter reappeared and asked if anyone wanted coffee. Bate raised her glass. Happy Mother's Day, Irene. Quiet laughter, a few tears. Mine finally, but just at the edges. Not dramatic, just relief. The kind you feel when you have been holding your breath for 4 years and someone finally says you can stop. People clink-egged glasses. Sarah squeezed my hand across the table. Janet said, I need a copy of that spreadsheet for my divorce lawyer. Natalie gathered the documents, tapped the pages on the tablecloth to straighten them, slid them back into the manila envelope and pushed it across the table to me. Keep it, I said. You earned it. It is your story, Mom. It was always our story. Dinner continued, cider but warmer. Dylan ordered the chocolate lava cake and split it with Natalie. Bate told a story about our mother that made everyone laugh. Frank ordered another beer and raised it toward me from across the table without a word. The check came to $462. I paid half. Natalie paid the other half from her work-study savings. Greg's place setting was still there. Untouched salmon, full water glass, empty chair. 3 months later, Greg and Cheryl separated. 6 weeks after the dinner, I heard through Frank. Cheryl had started reviewing their joint finances, mortgage application, tax filings, credit accounts, and found discrepancies that went beyond what Natalie had read at the table. Cheryl's attorney advised her that Greg had underreported income on their mortgage application. There were legal implications. Cheryl filed for divorce in July. I did not celebrate. I did not call anyone. I went to work and reconciled a quarterly variance report and ate a turkey sandwich at my desk. Dylan moved in with me full-time at the end of June. No custody fight. Greg did not contest it. Dylan enrolled in a summer internship at a local accounting firm, a small practice on High Street, 3 CPAs and a receptionist. He came home the first day and said, I did not know accounting was this interesting. Give it time, I said. It gets better around tax season. Linda stopped talking about me publicly. Frank said she still believed Greg's version, but she had stopped broadcasting it. I did not pursue a relationship with her. I did not need to. I did not lose a mother-in-law. I told Dr. Ackeper at my next session, I lost someone who never saw me clearly. That is a different kind of loss. Natalie made Dean's List. She joined a student financial literacy club and started teaching workshops for first-generation college students on how to read tax returns and understand financial aid forms. She called it Numbers Don't Lie Night. My apartment was still the same. 2 bedrooms, kitchen window facing the sugar maples. Same routine, same job. Though Thompson and Gale promoted me to senior management accountant in August, but the air in the rooms was different, lighter, like someone had opened a window that had been painted shut for years. I found the Mother's Day card again in my wallet. Natalie's 14-year-old handwriting. Thank you for everything you do that no one sees. Everyone saw now. I spent 4 years waiting for someone to tell the truth about my contribution to that family. I did not need to wait at all. The truth was in a manila envelope in my desk drawer the whole time. 16 years of tax returns, investment statements, and bank records that nobody had bothered to open. I just needed someone who was not afraid to read them. That person was my daughter. She was 19 years old. She was braver than I ever was, and she did not get that from Greg. That is my story. 1 dinner, 1 envelope, 16 years of numbers that finally got read out loud. If this reminded you to keep your own records or to tell someone what they are really worth, share this with them. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next.